Welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone. And welcome to our second week of candidate forums for townwide positions. Our two contested races are for school committee and select board, and we have a candidate from each with us this morning, Elise Gorseth, running for re-election to school committee, and Bruce Evans running for re-election to select board. Hopefully everybody can work with us. For the number of candidates requires us to have two candidates per week here. Normally we would have tried to devote an entire session to a single candidate, but what we're planning to do here is after introductions, we'll give each candidate an opportunity to talk about their platform, why they're running for re-election, so forth, what for as much time essentially as they'd like, and then we'll open it up to open discussion of for both candidates, and we'll try to do our best to make sure that the time doesn't get monopolized to one office or the other. But honestly, I think some issues the town is facing have work that both boards would have work to do with. So I think I look forward to an interesting discussion. And the one other logistic, I think there may be a couple of candidates for the position that aren't our featured speakers that are present. And I'd just like to ask them to limit their questions to the candidates for the other position. I don't really want to turn this into a debate between two candidates for the same position. So if you can work with us for that, and let's move on to introductions. Martin, who have you got there at MetroWorks?
We got a few people. Let me just make a quick announcement first before I forget. Todd Gillenwater, who's the chair of the finance committee, he's going to be on talking about town meeting articles in a few weeks, but he asked if we could remind people that there are hearings on town meeting articles at the finance committee that happen to be starting tomorrow. Tomorrow's the very first one. So people who are interested should check the town website. Tomorrow is 5 articles that I would say are routine articles. They're not like cliffhangers. Matter of fact, I expect they'll probably end up on the consent agenda, but if those people who really want to follow the articles, I would check the town website to see what's being discussed tomorrow and moving forward on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
And finance committee generally meets Tuesdays and Thursdays all the way up to town meeting.
Correct. So anyway, my name is Martin Kessel, as I was supposed to say, and I co-host this, and I'm a longtime town meeting member and open space committee member.
I'm Cindy Bates. I'm a 5-year resident of Natick. I'm a trail steward and Keep Natick Beautiful helper and member of Sound and Spirit singing chorus.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Donovan. I'm on the library board of trustees. I also volunteer with Keep Natick Beautiful.
My name is Rich Sidney. I'm actually on the select board, and I'm here to support candidates for re-election.
I'm Bruce Evans. I am a candidate for re-election. I volunteer for a lot of different things. In addition to Friends of the Library, I'm involved in their book sales. I'm about to start coaching baseball again. Believe it or not, their baseball season is actually around the corner, despite the Arctic temperatures. It will begin the end of March. So I do that as well. I used to coach basketball, but I've gotten away from that as I've been on the select board. So enjoyed volunteering, love the town, and look forward to talking with you.
Thanks.
That's it for MetroWorks.
Okay, and I'm moving online. We've got Paul.
Good morning. Good morning, candidates. This is great. I'm Paul Carew. As some of you know, I work for the town of Natick, Department of Veteran Services, and I love the town of Natick. I've got 64 years living in the town of Natick, so a little seniority.
Thanks, Paul. Carrie.
Hi, good morning, Bruce. Good to see you. I do a little bit of volunteer work myself here. It's good to see you the other day. Treasurer for Keep Natick Beautiful. Many years ago with some other people I don't see here now. I helped to start Renewable Natick, which 8 months after our kickoff meeting, got town meeting to pass the resolution that we drafted, helping Jillian move to 100% renewable energy. Former town meeting member, Sergeant at Arms for Natick Rotary, the Repair Cafe guy. We've got our 6th one coming up May 4th at the Senior Center, and a few other things, but that's kind of it.
Thanks, Carrie. Sally?
Good morning. I'm Sally Hopkins, and I'm an ardent fan of CWAP. I think you folks are doing such a wonderful job, and I sure appreciate candidates and prospective candidates coming and sharing who you are and what your points of view are. I work also, of course, with my brother Pat Conaway and Keep Natick Beautiful. And I'm helping start and work with a small group, but we hope it gets larger. Black Lives Belong. And we're really interested in embracing all of our citizens, and particularly focusing on not just Black, but Native lives and awareness for the community. So eager to hear your comments this morning.
Thanks, Sally. Pat.
Good morning, everybody. This is Pat Conaway. Keep Natick Beautiful.
Thanks, Pat. Carol.
I'm Carol Berkowitz, and this morning I just want to say that I'm interested in all things Natick and support my friend Sally Hopkins.
Carol. Bev.
Hi, sorry, I'm just on audio today, listening in. I'm Martin Kessel's wife, and I've also been on town meeting for about 14 years, and I've lived in Natick for 30 years. Martin grew up here, but we came back, and I'm looking forward to hearing the candidates today. Thank you.
Thanks, Bev. Carol.
I'm Carol Gloff.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
The other Carol.
Yeah, 2 Carols today.
Yeah, I know. In our age range, it happens, Carol. So I'm Carol Gloff. I am on the library board of trustees for the library, and have done a variety of volunteer work and public work in the town of Natick. And I'm here. I am helping Bruce Evans with his campaign, but I promise I don't have any set up questions that I'm going to ask him to make him look good. He'll do that on his own. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. I believe Bunny's iPhone is really Catherine Coughlin. Is that you, Catherine?
Oops. Yep, it's me.
I can rename you if you want, but
please rename me.
Yeah.
Catherine Coughlin, Natick Affordable Housing Trust, Select Board, Town Meeting Member. Just here to listen. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. Donna.
Hi, good morning. Good to be here. I'm Donna McKenzie. I'm a town meeting member. I'm also a founding member of Black Lives Belong. I'm a member of the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee. I am a member of the advisory board for the Natick Service Council, and I am also part of Eco Natick. I'm a former 2-term school committee member, also running for I could say re-election, but running for election. And I'm just glad to be here. I have frequently, almost regularly now, attending Coffee with Purpose, and I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the discussion. So welcome to the 2 candidates running for re-election. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. And you guys may see that Sarah and I are not in the same place. Sarah had total knee replacement surgery on Friday, and so is participating from a remote location above me. Sarah, do you want to say hi? Or?
Yeah, hi everyone. I think I'm mostly going to listen and not talk, but glad to be here in some form.
Yeah. And I'm Doug. I moderate the group, and that gets us to Elise, our last attendee and candidate for school committee. So Elise, the floor is yours.
Oh, hi, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. This was such a fun discussion 3 years ago, so very happy to be back. So I think many of you know me. I've been on school committee since 2022, and I am seeking reelection. We've lived in Natick we just completed our first decade in Natick. My husband and I moved here in 2014 with our 3 daughters, who are now freshmen in high school, which is unbelievable considering they started at the preschool in the high school when we first arrived 10 years ago. I've been very privileged to work on school committee these past 3 years, and I'm looking forward to talking about that. I'm hoping we can have lots of questions. I think that's always more interesting than having me just sit here and talk. But yeah, delighted to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Okay. Do you have more that you want to talk about at this point?
Oh,
yeah.
Sure. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if we were at that point of
Yes.
introductory. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's why I
Absolutely.
saved you for last.
Oh, very clever. Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, I've been on school committee for 3 years. I originally joined because I have a child with special needs, and I had become very involved in working in the schools through our school council when my child was at Lilja, and also through the Natick Parents for Special Education group. And, really became curious about how the special education budget was run and developed, how services were designed, and that kind of drew me into all of the other interesting and complicated things about running a school district. So I ran for school committee and was elected in 2022. Since then, I've served in several leadership roles. I'm currently the vice chair of the committee, and I'm in my second year of that role. And that's been great, working with our chair, Shai Fuchsman, and meeting regularly with our superintendent to help plan our meetings and ensure that the business of the school committee gets done efficiently, and that all voices on school committee are heard and can really contribute in the ways that they want to. It's been an exciting 3 years. We've had to hire 2 superintendents. I was on the screening committee for the interim superintendent position, and that was, a really stressful but fruitful endeavor. We were able to hire an excellent interim superintendent who not only came in and kind of kept the ship sailing in the right direction and could be reassuring to staff and to students that we weren't going to have huge changes while we took a year to really do a very comprehensive search for a full-time superintendent who we hired just a year ago and who started in July, Dr. Melissa Spash, who has really been just amazing. I hope everyone has had an opportunity to speak to her or hear her speak, because I really think that she is just such a perfect fit for Natick, and is already making changes in really positive and thoughtful ways. Other things that I've done on school committee, I'm part of the policy subcommittee, and we've had to deliver several policies in response to district needs. We most recently delivered a policy on cell phone use in schools. And I think the interesting thing being on the policy subcommittee is you really need to hear the voices of all the stakeholders. And I think that the cell phone policy was a really great example of that, where, administrators had a point of view, students had a point of view, parents had a point of view, and, lots of school committee members had strong points of view. So trying to find the right balance of ensuring that people are heard, but also doing the right thing is, I think, a hallmark of what developing policy is about. And I've been privileged to be part of that. And then the third thing I wanted to highlight is most recently I was on the negotiating committee, negotiating our contracts with our teachers and administrators. And that was really an amazing experience. We do interest-based bargaining in Natick, which is a very collaborative process that takes a long time. So we started in September, and we just recently have finished the negotiations and met weekly for 3 or 4 hours. So it's a very labor-intensive, but very worthwhile process, as we have deep discussions about every topic that's addressed in the contract. And I just feel like that was just such a wonderful learning experience, and really appreciated it. So I would love to continue the work that I've been doing on the school committee. I'd love to support our new superintendent as she starts her work, and I'm seeking re-election and would love to earn your votes on March 26th, and happy to take any questions.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for that. And I think before we go into questions, let's give Bruce the floor to talk about his candidacy as well.
Thank you very much, Doug. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you all this morning. As I finished my first term on the select board, I realized that we were able to accomplish many things, but there's more to do. And I'm running for a second term where I hope to continue to serve our community. I bring my extensive experience in town government and in working with a 5-person team to work on the issues that are at hand. The town has not required an operational override since 2008, when it requested an override of $3.9 million, which is 4% of the overall budget. The override that we settled on putting on the ballot is $7 million, which is a similar percentage of under 4% of the overall budget. Why is it required? So what's a structural deficit? You hear that term thrown around a lot. The structural deficit is when revenues are generated by the town are less than the expenses that the town is incurring. Some may claim that this is due to reckless spending. However, my 12 years on the finance committee and 3 years on the select board indicate otherwise. The town has been very well managed financially. Yes, there are things we're improving on, but I think the ability to go 16 years without an override in these times is incredible. What is it? What's the override do? It's a cash infusion to realign those expenses with the revenue. So bring them back into alignment over time. When you have inflation and capital expenses and insurance and health insurance all going up between 5 and 10%, and you have Prop 2.5 plus new growth, capping how much the town can make or can charge residents, there's inevitably going to be a gap there. So Prop 2.5 allows voters to weigh in and say, have they justified the need for that operational override or not? In this case, a no vote means sizable cuts to Natick public schools, and the head count is 41 people. Those are largely student-facing positions, which is very dangerous. They've already cut $2 million out of their budgets for the last 2 years. The town has cut out $1 million. So I think they've done a lot of work to reduce the size of the override. So I'd like to talk about 5 areas that I think we need to focus on. First is fiscal sustainability. Natick must live within its means, and it does. But as inflation and healthcare and health insurance all exceeded that 2.5 plus new growth limit, the town developed that structural deficit. So this is an infusion of cash to bridge that imbalance. And we need to get to roughly 2030 when we have our pension liability that's fully funded, which will free up $12 to $16 million per year. The next item is affordability. I want to work to find ways to keep Natick more affordable. I've advocated for greater diversity in housing choices. I voted to make a meaningful impact on affordable housing in the Elise School or 5 Auburn Street project that has 32 units of 100% affordable housing. Sorry, what?
No, just somebody who's been waiting.
Okay, sorry about that. Promoting property tax savings programs to help long-term residents keep in Natick, and looking into more programs that are less age dependent and more income dependent to help people stay in their housing. The next area is communication and transparency. We've done things like Natick 101, which informs students how various parts of their government work through briefings and recordings, and I encourage people to take a look at them. They're usually about an hour long, very informative. We'll continue our communications and outreach programs such as Civic Plus to inform people when meetings are happening and what the meetings, the agenda of those meetings are. We have a digital welcome kit now, which is more or less like the welcome wagon kind of thing that says, when you come to Natick as a newcomer, here are the basic services. Here are the things that you need to know to get around Natick. And we'll continue to improve the town website and make it more usable. Another area of emphasis is environmental sustainability. We're continuing to invest in the water supply to ensure that safety. We've been doing that over probably the last 4 or 5 years, making substantial investments to protect us against things like PFAS and other things. And I'm continuing to advocate for sustainable strategies in Natick, things like a specialized building stretch code, which emphasizes to builders that they should think about at least preparing their buildings to be electrified and to move away from fossil fuels. A zero emission vehicle preference when the town buys vehicles and if they're suitable to being a zero equipment vehicle, not a heavy duty type job, encouraging the purchase of those. Next item is something called the Climate Leaders Program, which is the follow-on to Green Communities, and that we entered that early as an opportunity to get more grant possibilities. Last item is to build a thriving, inclusive community. We want to continue to attract new restaurants and businesses to Natick and create a diverse economic base. We want to leverage the MBTA, the completion of the Natick Center MBTA station and the completion of multifamily housing to revitalize Natick Center. We're also working to find better ways to handle parking in the downtown area. And that's an ongoing, we're getting a briefing, I believe, on April 1st. Really, that's not an April Fool's joke. So we'll continue working on that. So that's really what I'm at. My website is, and I can provide this in the chat later. So I'll stop there and let you guys ask some questions of Elise and I.
Great.
Elise and
Yeah, thank you for that, Bruce, and thanks also, Elise. If we can use our usual custom of using the raise hands function, I'll start off with a question that I'd like to ask both candidates, and it has to do with social media. I was interested, Elise, in hearing you talk about the school coming up with a policy for cell phone use in the schools, but beyond just that particular issue, although I'd like to hear more about that too. There's an awful, I don't know how many different Facebook groups there are, and there's probably groups on other platforms as well that discuss matters presumably of interest to Natick. You know, there's the Natick dads, the Natick moms, the Natick talks, the real Natick talks. You know, there's so many of them, and I know sometimes there's an undercurrent of to what extent the town officially is engaging or not engaging in those communities. I'm interested in both of your thoughts of whether you see a sweet spot or just kind of how you view those tools. Is there any value to them at all? Are there limits to their value? Either one can go first, although maybe if we start with Elise, maybe you could also just touch a little bit more on what the cell phone policy for the schools is likely to try to do.
Sure. Yes, I can definitely. I'll circle back to that because I think that your question about social media is a really important one. And I know that I have found myself in the last year trying to avoid social media. I feel like Facebook, I mean, our new superintendent commented that, you're such a Facebook town because that's how the main mode of communication is amongst townspeople is via Facebook. And I think that's true. But I also think that that is excluding a large segment of our population who are new to Natick and who are, I'll just say it younger. My daughter says, Mom, only old people use Facebook. I know all kids think that their parents are old. But I had an opportunity recently to meet with a group of parents of preschoolers, and none of them are on Facebook. None of them use Facebook. None of them want to use Facebook. So they're completely out of the loop on all of these conversations that are being had currently about the override, about town finances. So while I think it's the tool that we have now, I think we need to rethink it because we're not reaching everybody who needs to be part of the conversation. And I think that there can be just so much negativity, and part of the reason that I decided I'm not going to have any substantive conversations on Facebook. I'm just not. I'm going to talk to people in person, or via Zoom, but I want to see somebody face to face and have a conversation because I think that there's so much frustration and anger and fear that people have that I think a lot of times I think that comes out in these, I'm going to use air quotes, conversations that take place on social media where people are just really upset and maybe not being their best selves. And I want to be my best self in conversations with people, so I'm trying to take it offline. And so I don't know what we do because we have no more local news. We have no newspaper. We have no place to have these conversations other than social media. And, on those rare chances we run into our friends and neighbors at the grocery store or at Tilly's or on the common. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know that we're missing people. And there are people whose voices are really important, and they are people who are raising the next generation of Natick citizens. So we need to find a way to connect with them. And then I know you wanted to hear about the cell phone policy, so I just want to loop back to that. So this is a policy that was requested by administration and also by parents. I think parents are really frustrated that their kids, they're reporting that their kids are able to use their cell phones in schools. But in looking at the policy, there were really very different needs at different schools. So at elementary and middle school, there really was kind of a need for administration to be able to completely shut down all cell phone use. But at the high school, our principal shared with us that this is where students have to learn how to manage cell phones and social media, and that they didn't want to be responsible for taking cell phones away from students, but they wanted to promote sort of responsible use policies. So we have a policy that allows both of those things to happen, in the younger grades for administrators to completely restrict their use, and then in high school to put the burden of responsible use more onto the student.
Thanks for that information. This particular, you had said at the outset that it's so important to hear from all stakeholders, and it's got to be frustrating when some of them seem to communicate only via that method. I know Pat's got his hand up, but let's hear Bruce's initial thoughts on this too, and then we'll take Pat's question or comment.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. I would agree with 100% of what Elise just said. We at the select board level have been working on developing a social media policy that is to not engage in official, I'll call them informal communications with people on Facebook. What I tend to do, and I tend to be very careful about this, is I will provide information and links to people that say, here's the information on this. But it's not 100%. To be honest, there are some things that either time or my specific knowledge of a specific project is in contrast to what's being portrayed on Facebook. And so I have to make a judgment call as to whether to correct that misconception and point them to resources, or just let it, fester is the wrong word, let it continue on the site there. One of my former colleagues on the select board said to me one time, you have to beware of the very vocal minority. And you have to be able to look at the entire picture of the entire town and understand that you have to represent that entire town.
Thanks, Pat.
Good morning again, and I appreciate all your service over the years, Bruce, and Lisa and everybody else here, like especially Martin, Doug, and people who, what could you say? They have that stamina to get through town meeting, things like that, the finance committee. My question is more in terms of this long-term problem we have with the underrepresentation of at least one precinct, and Carol and others are doing in charter reform. And I was curious, Bruce, what's your view on that? What are your ideas?
My view is that, and I supported the creation of the Charter Commission, which I think the town meeting form of government has pluses and minuses. The pluses are it allows everybody to get involved if they want to. And it's kind of like the sausage making operation of the town, because sometimes it can just be ugly, and it can just be cumbersome, and it can be take a disproportionate amount of time to do the most basic things sometimes. So I think the charter's been around since, I don't know the exact start, probably the late 60s, early 70s. So it's prudent for us to look at it and analyze, is this still working well? Are there things we could modify? Do we want to keep this existing system but tweak it? Do we want to change it? I think most people in the town would agree that they don't want to become a city form of government. But is there something between that has a strong town manager and a council? One of the questions you asked, Pat, was underrepresented districts. And by having a council member representing that district, as opposed to a shortage of town meeting members from that district, might be helpful. So I think I'm willing to take an open mind on that. I joked with one of my colleagues one time. It said, if the form of government may change, I might be one of the last select board people in Natick. So I'm supportive of it. I want to see it looked at and examined. It's healthy, and I think it could be productive.
Okay.
Thanks for that. Martin, someone wants to speak at MetroWorks there?
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, great.
I was the one who was skeptical about asking questions of the select board and school committee at the same time, but I have a question that actually has two variations, one for each board. And I would start by saying Natick, delightfully, has always been a welcoming community and cherished diversity, but in the current national situation, that's become a challenge even in Natick. And it's manifested itself most recently at the select board with what you'd think we expected to be a very non-controversial policy to welcome immigrants into our community, which turned out to be quite controversial. And then in the school committee, maybe that's occurred there as well, but what I'm thinking more of in the school committee is the parental rights group who have sort of challenged being welcoming to the LGBTQ community. So I guess I would ask each of you, how do you deal with that pushback against what I believe all of us here believe should be a welcoming community, and it's becoming more of a challenge to be a welcoming community.
Elise, I can start if you want to gather
Sure.
your thoughts.
Oh, go ahead. Sure.
I kind of lived through that very much so, and you know, one of the things, this has been the culmination of several years' discussion. And the word sanctuary city was a lightning rod. And when it first came to us, people, proponents of it, wanted a sanctuary city, and the select board said, no, we're not going to do a sanctuary city. We're not going to provide housing. We're not going to provide monetary assistance. However, that led to a discussion with the police chief, and I was involved closely in that. I was the chair at the time. So we worked with that group and said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to make a welcoming community. We initially titled our policy that, but we changed it to immigration documentation. And what that in essence says is we are not going to have our public safety people or town government employees ask about immigration status. It's not their job. They do not have the legal mandate to do that as a police force. If you look at the state law and the federal law, we are 100% following the state and federal laws. If there's a what's called a civil detainer issued by ICE, that means they've got somebody who they think might be in the country without proper documentation. In that case, that's the Natick police steps aside. If ICE wants to come get this person, and this person has been, for whatever reason, we don't get involved in it. It's not our mandate. We don't have jurisdiction. On the other hand, if someone is arrested for a crime in Natick or is held for some reason on a criminal warrant, and ICE says, yes, this person's wanted on a criminal warrant from ICE as well. So we will hold that person. And ICE will come over, let's say this person is involved in human trafficking. We will hold them, we will hand them over to ICE. The federal crime takes precedence over the state crime. The other facet of this was to enable people in our community who may or may not have proper documentation to come forward when they're either a victim of a crime or witness a crime. If they fear they're going to be deported, I don't think that really helps public safety. So that's why we made the decision moving forward.
If I can follow up,
Sure.
Thanks for all the specifics, but I'm also getting at a more general question as to when something appears to be the right course of action, in your mind and probably most of our minds, how do you deal with a vocal minority that is spreading?
Yeah.
You know,
It's a good follow-on question. I think what we have to do as a board is model good behavior, right? If we treat other people with respect when they come before us, even when we disagree with them, you know, treat them with respect. They've got a right to their opinion as much as I have a right to my opinion. We're not perfect. We're not the, we're not the judicial branch. We are our fellow residents. We will listen to different points of view. We will make an informed decision that we think is in the best interest of the overall town. I think modeling that good behavior is the key. I mean, you think about when you're a kid and your parents modeled good behavior. You picked up on it. All of us are sort of reflections of the parenting that we've gotten, and maybe some relatives were involved, but you know, that behavior was modeled for us, and that's what we picked up. That's what we live by.
Elise, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think that, our schools are very welcoming places, and I can confidently say that every one of our schools, our teachers and staff are wonderful and welcoming of all students. And I think that we need to support them in being able to continue to do that and feel unafraid in welcoming every student into our schools. And you know, while I see that these, you know, these threats to civil liberties are very real, right? And they're coming at us from all directions, but mostly from one direction right now. I feel really comfortable and confident and happy to be living in Massachusetts, where we have very strong state law that guides us. We have a Department of Education that has very strong policies that guide us. And our policies that we've created for Natick are strong and protective of all students and are totally in alignment with Department of Education policies and state law. So I feel like we just need to, you know, keep our course going forward and know that we're doing the right thing and that we are living in, you know, a town that largely supports all kids and largely supports the policies of the school committee. And there's always going to be people who are uncomfortable with that, people who are fearful with that. And I think we have to listen to them, you know, listen really actively and just continue to respond with, you know, the things that we're doing are the right thing to do and they're supported by state law and policy. And I think it's not a simple thing to do. I know I'm making it sound like it's a simple thing to do, but I think sometimes doing the right thing is not being reactive. It's just knowing that you're doing the right thing and continuing to ensure that all of those supports are in place so that teachers aren't fearful, administrators aren't fearful, families aren't fearful. And, you know, this extends, you know, well beyond, you know, what's been in the news about LGBTQ plus students, right? We have families of Jewish students who are fearful. We have families of Palestinian students who are fearful. We have families who are new to the United States and don't really understand the school system and maybe come from very different backgrounds and, you know, need to be welcomed into this community and, you know, so that they feel welcome, but so that they also understand how things work here and how we value people. That's my response.
If I could follow up with one question, kind of similar to the way Bruce gave us the essence of the immigration policy. I know one of the current flashpoints for some parents in town about school policy has to do with whether the parents are notified if a child wants to use different pronouns and be referred to as a different gender in school. And I'm sure there's all kinds of miscommunication about it. And I don't want to take a lot of time, but could you kind of just give us the essence of what the school position is on that? And then we'll go to Pat's question.
Yes, I don't have the policy in front of me. I'm happy to point you guys towards the policy. But basically, our position is that we follow state law, which requires that protected groups receive protection and that students who are transitioning need to have their needs met during that time of questioning and figuring out their gender identity. So that is a legal requirement that we have, and we will always continue to meet those needs of those students. And the best case scenario, and I'm speaking as a mom here, you know, but I think the best case scenario for any student is that they feel comfortable discussing how they feel with their parents at any point in time. And I think that our schools support that as the best case scenario, and that the goal is always to foster communication and understanding with families. But if a student is fearful or not comfortable or simply just not ready, you know, we have a requirement to meet the needs of the student in the schools.
Thank you for that. And Pat, I know you have your hand up.
Yeah, excuse me, Martin and Doug, I was wondering, if you could, you've probably already done this, but what is the races now for school committee and for select board? How many candidates and how many openings are there for each one? I'm still a little confused about that.
There are 3 candidates for 2 open seats on select board.
Okay.
That's Bruce and Catherine are both running for re-election. And then there's another candidate, Catherine Kelly, running for a seat. And there are 4 candidates for 3 open slots, as I understand it, for school committee. So we have Donna McKenzie, Elise, why am I drawing a blank now?
Kathy Collins.
Kathy Collins and
Jamin Patel.
And Jamin Patel, who we had last week. Yeah.
Yes, for
right.
school committee. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Ricky, I see you've got your hand up, and welcome.
Yes, I do. Thank you. The federal, I guess the Congress just passed, it may have been yesterday or the day before, that English is the official language of the country now. And I know that we have as many as, well, upwards of 50 different languages amongst the student population in Natick. How is the school department planning to deal with that?
Well, school is taught in English, so that won't change anything. And
Right.
we have, a state requirement to provide English language learner services to students who do not yet speak English. And that is a very prescriptive service that schools require. Students who are English language learners are evaluated and determined at what level of English competency they're at. And then there's a prescribed service that's delivered to those students to help them both access the curriculum in English, but also make progress on becoming proficient in speaking and reading English. So those services will continue as is. That's mandated by state law. We also have translation services in place. So our newsletters that go out to families we now have the functionality where families can click a button and have it automatically translated into a language of their choice. So parents can access information in their own language. We provide interpreter services for parent-teacher conferences as needed, and none of that will change.
That's comforting to know.
Yeah.
I guess I'd extend that question to Bruce as well. I'm guessing I might know the answer to this, but in light of that, I don't know if it was an executive order or Congress stating that, but would the town be planning any changes in, or perhaps maybe just, is there a blanket statement you can make about what does the town do for general town communications to make them available in languages other than English?
That's a great question. I know that on the town website, you have the option to translate anything that's on that webpage. You just click a button and you get the presentation of the material in whatever language you choose. I think that's a good first step. I think as we evolve our communications, we should give people the option to receive that. For example, most of you probably received a mailer talking about the election and the override vote. It was sent out, I guess, on Saturday. I know I was away, so I just got it when I came back Sunday. But maybe we need to have the ability to reach people in other languages with that type of mailer. It's kind of hard when you have a mass mailing, though, to tailor it to an individual translation, but you could do something like show it as an illustration on our town website and then be able to translate it on that site. So you wouldn't get the mailer, but I would expect that between the school parents and the residents in the community. They say, did you see this? If they know somebody's a non-native English speaker, they might say, did you know this? I mean, everybody, we can probably get the point across. I lived in Mexico for a couple of years in the 80s, and my Spanish was rudimentary when I started. But I was able to get across basic points and just say, where is this and when does that happen? So I think to that level, if neighbors can assist neighbors in getting those types of messages out, I think that's a good first step. I think we can do better. We're always trying to do better in terms of communication. So that's something I'll jot down and say, hey, what can we do about this?
Good, good. Brittany, I see you've put a couple of links in the chat. Do you want to just explain what those are? Or?
Sure. The conversation had come up about gender identity and following the law. And so I was just helping Elise out there with that conversation. I posted, the first link I posted was actually DESE's guidelines and stance on it. DESE is the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for Massachusetts. And then the second one is actually the MassGov site regarding gender law, identity and expression.
Great, thank you. Not seeing any other hands at the moment. I guess I'll continue. Got a whole list of questions, but this next one is kind of an expansion of Ricky's question about, what's the impact of this change that the administration had. That one was about English language, but just in general, we're all well aware that the new administration is making sweeping changes across the board. And a lot of them have to do with federal funding and things like that. So I'm just wondering, and this is a question for both Elise and Bruce, from what you've seen so far, and I know things are very much up in the air, but where do you see the biggest challenges coming to the way things are done in Natick, or from any changes that the federal administration is making? What are we going to have to be on the lookout for, or try to do differently, or fund differently?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in with there. So I think that, again, I think my stance is to, until our new superintendent has a wonderful saying, and she says, your emergency is not my emergency. And I think that has been really helpful in for me in this situation where it feels like everything's on fire all day, every day, to think that, okay, let's wait until we really know what the impact is. I feel like there's a lot of noise coming out of a certain part of the country right now, and yet we don't really know if it's going to have any impact on our state law regarding education. We don't know if it's going to have any impact on funding. So I think until there's a problem that needs addressing, I think we keep doing the things that we're doing. We have solid policies in place that protect our students. We have amazing educators who want to be here and want to engage with and educate all our students. And we just keep doing the work of the district and ensuring that when there is something that we need to respond to, that we're ready. And again, I feel very comforted that we have an excellent Attorney General who's going to be interpreting these potential threats to Massachusetts for us and acting on our behalf. We have a really strong Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that's, examining these orders as they're coming in and determining whether or not they have any impact on us and translating that for us. So I don't want to overreact as a district, as a school district, when we have such strong layers of protection in place. And that said, we're fully aware of what's going on. We're paying attention. We're evaluating if things may impact us or not. We're doing the work that needs to be done.
Thanks for that, Elise. Bruce, your thoughts?
I agree with all of what Elise just said, but I'd add a couple of things. One is it dismayed me when I heard on NPR that the White House website was no longer going to be available in Spanish, for example. To me, that flies in the face of transparency. It is the opposite of what we want to model in Natick. I think I agree with what Elise said about our Attorney General. I think that it's attorneys generals, to say it really, are banding together to dispute things that are knowingly unconstitutional and out of the powers that are granted to the chief executive of the country, which is the president. I believe in many of these areas he has overstepped. I will believe they will be successfully challenged in the court system. I also believe that our legislative branch, both at the state and federal level, are fighting back hard. They will insist on things being held up to the light of whether they're constitutional, whether they're legal. And, you know, it's with this federal administration, every day is going to be a challenge for the foreseeable future. Their intention was to wear down the American public with so many things that they could slip some things in while people were busy putting out fires elsewhere. But I think they're underestimating the resolve of people to fight back. A case in point is even in the red states, they're having to, for those representatives who actually will do a town hall, they're getting an earful from their constituents, as they should. And so I think that although there are executive orders flying out of the White House, let's see what happens. Let's see what sticks. We have a lot of people working on our behalf to challenge the validity of these things. So I'm uneasy but confident that we can resist.
Thanks for that. I see Ricky's got her hand up. Martin, I need to step away from the computer for a couple of minutes. So after Ricky speaks, if you can kind of take over for a few minutes, and I'll be back as soon as I can.
While I appreciate the moderation of the reaction, that we shouldn't overreact, I agree with that. But I think we have a vulnerability that we have to protect, and that is the sources of federal sources of funding that we have for education and for municipal issues, whether it's housing or special services. And I think we have to look at that funding and when it expires and how we keep it, that funding coming to the town, and what we do if it does not come from the feds. And the chances that it won't are pretty good. So I think there is a distinct vulnerability there that we can't wait until it happens. I think we have to look at it and see what we stand to lose and how we can protect that. I don't know how to do that, but I think it's something that we have to do, and we have to be proactive. I don't think we can just wait.
So, and I hear that. I totally hear that. And I think that a point to know is that most of the federal funding that comes to public schools is through the IDEA Act, which is the act that created and governs, you know, how special education services are delivered. So most of school funding is related to special education. And that is currently not under direct threat by any of these executive orders that have come forward.
But
So
doesn't that come through the Department of Education, the feds?
it does, but it comes as payments to the state. Yes.
Yes, I understand, but they want to wipe out the Department of Education.
They do. But
Yeah.
they do, but I don't believe they're going to. I just don't believe they're going to do that. I don't believe that. I personally, if Congress allows the Department of Education to be wiped out, then we have a much bigger problem than having, these federal grants that come to us for special education. So I feel pretty confident. I'm not confident that it's not going to happen, but I feel like this is something that our Congress needs to act on, and we can't control that in Natick. So we're fully aware of how many dollars we have coming in for special education through federal grants. We absolutely have our eye on that.
Well, I think then it's up to, I think it would be up to the town to make very clear how much money we get from the federal level of government, and urge our citizens to be active in letting their Congress people know that they have to fight like hell to make sure that that department does not disappear. I think the letting people know what's at stake specifically for the town of Natick and waking people up to our issues, that's a job that we have to do.
Okay, Bruce has been eager to jump in on this. I'm not sure you're talking about the Department of Education or the larger question.
Probably the larger question. The large, your comments are spot on, Ricky. This is an issue that we have to work with our federal legislators on. And I can tell you, in listening to both Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren, that they are fighting all over. They have had plans you just witnessed a town or a gathering in Framingham.
Well, I went to that, and I was out there. I went to the protest the week before, and I was a little distressed that the advice that was given to people was tell people your stories of how it affects you. And I thought that that was a mild request of the 2,000 people that were there, that I felt they really needed to be galvanized into stronger action than just telling their friends and neighbors about, gee, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my Social Security. And I think that, again, the town needs to make explicit in whatever way it can the amount of federal funds that we receive and what we stand to lose if we lose this fight in the Congress. And we need to, not just Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren is out there fighting, and she's fighting for the Consumer Protection Agency. That's her main focus. And Markey is fighting, I'm not sure what his focus is, but I think we should publicize in whatever way we can how much money and how it impacts the people in Natick, to get them off their tails and get them to do something. Like contribute.
Hang on, Ricky, let me answer some of those thoughts.
Sure.
I think we have to do it bottom up, and that's what you're seeing as an example. I said earlier with the town meetings that people are having with their representatives, it bubbles up, right? It needs to bubble up. Just the furor that people are seeing for cuts to the elimination of the Department of Education, climate change denialism and gutting that agency, gutting of all the oversight agencies. Does anybody other than me feel great unease about flying anymore with what they're doing to the FAA? Right. So those are all issues that we push up the chain. Right. It goes up to our state legislators. It goes then to our federal legislators, they will have people on feet on the street. They will be influencing and pushing back. The attorneys generals are going to push back hard against the illegality of some of these ideas. And I think I take your point that we can't be passive about this. Yeah, we can lose federal grants for environmental sustainability type things. I don't have, I'm not an ostrich. I don't have my head in the sand. And I don't think that anyone does. I think people, it's like we're lighting a fuse, right? We're lighting a fuse that's a long burning fuse, but when it explodes, it's going to explode big, right? So I think we have to start small and build, right? I agree with you that it has to start now, and I think it is.
Okay, thank you. So we have a lot of people who have their hand up at this point, and we're gonna sort of expand it. I think we definitely hit upon an issue that's capturing everybody's attention and concern at the moment. But we have just in this room, Judy and Cindy have had their hand up for some time, and now Doug has his hand up. And
yeah, well, no, yeah, sorry for being away, but
moderation here. But let's. I know that Judy and Cindy have
yeah.
been trying to say something for a while.
Hey there, everybody. Good morning. I came in a little bit late, and I know Bruce rather well. We spent a week together at the legislative seminar up at the State House in the fall and got to know each other. I was looking forward to meeting Elise because we haven't met face to face before. I am the housing equity advocate at Family Promise Metro West, which is a new position. I've also worked the Natick Public Schools for 13 years, much longer than I intended to work in those roles. And ran a family support and engagement program funded by the Department of Early Education and Care for 6 years back in the day, where I made the acquaintance of Catherine Brunel and Julie McDonough and Kaylee Sonneborn. And I'm so thrilled that I think their engagement in our community started back then when their kiddos were little. I wanted to say to Bruce, thank you so much for the information that you've shared recently on social media. Just demonstrating the depth to which you understand the affordable housing issue. And I wanted to give each of you a chance to let us know a little bit about your feelings about serving people through affordable housing. I wanted to ask Bruce to share, I heard you say that, you know, affordability is a priority in this community. And I think that it's important for residents who aren't thinking about it to know why. Why should we ensure that there is affordable housing, and who are we welcoming into that affordable housing? And then after you speak, I'd love to hear for Elise to share a little bit from the school side. We often hear our neighbors very worried about the impacts on our public schools in the event that we have some affordable housing units are an appropriate size for families. By the way, most of our developments have very few units that are actually large enough to be likely to host families. But I'd like to hear from the school side, can we handle that? Can we handle a few more families? And is that important, or should we actually not be allowing those projects to be built? So thank you.
Which first?
Okay. Thank you. Great question, Judy. I think I said earlier when in my comments on affordability, I'm very proud of our vote to do 100% affordable housing at the LH school. We chose Metro West CD development as 100% affordable units, 32 units at 30% of what's called area median income, which is the Boston area that says a certain income level. So 30%, too many percents in here. Half of them will make that easier. Half are 30%, and the other half are 60%. Most developments will at most do 10% of their units as affordable units, and they are usually at 80% of the AMI. And if you look at 80% of the AMI, that is out of the reach of a great many people. And the other part about the Elliott Street School was 70% of the lottery. It's a lot by lottery. 70% of the lottery choices have a preference for Natick. That is written into our development agreement. So that can house people who are DPW workers or police, fire, town clerk, are working in the town clerk's office. It really is quite important to allow people there. And it's not age restricted. It could be seniors who are downsizing and wanting to move to a nice place. It's a nice spot. The library is right there. I think it's appealing to a lot of people. I think we, as in the state, it's not a Natick problem. It's a statewide problem that there's a big shortage of affordable housing. When you have buildings that are going up as single family homes, that increases, generally speaking. There are usually 2 or 3 and sometimes 4 bedroom homes. Most people are relocating to Natick are doing so because we have a really good school system. We have relatively low taxes compared to our peer communities. So they're going to have kids in schools. The cost to educate a child in Natick is roughly, I'm guessing, I know it was around 15, I think it's $16,000 or $17,000 a year. Right? If you have 2 kids in the school system, that is a net loss to the town tax revenue wise. So the more we build those communities, it has a double negative whammy, right? More impact on the schools, and it also causes a negative impact on tax revenues because it's a net loss, tax wise. So I'll just leave it there.
You're saying that about single family homes.
Single family homes and most multifamily developments, if you look at the school does a census each year to say, all right, where are our kids coming from? And they ascertain, you know, where we need to reassign students as necessary. What I found interesting when I was on the finance committee is that very few of the residents of these multifamily developments have kids in school. They're generally 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. Most people with kiddos want them to have a yard to play around with or a more residential neighborhood. I know my campaign manager lives in a building that's an apartment building, and I think she said that out of, I forget of how many units, 25 units, there was 1 child that went to Natick Public Schools.
I didn't mean to jump in, but isn't that changing? I mean, because it's virtually impossible to afford a single family home for a family these days. So if they want to come at all, don't they have to get into a multi-family?
I think there's some of that, but again, it depends on the unit. If you're talking about single family units, there are a lot of people, many people who are going to be going into Boston. You look at the multifamily developments that we're putting in here, largely around the Natick Center area. They're going into Boston or towards Boston at least. They're using their cars to go to the grocery store and other things, but by and large, they're not wanting to use their car as frequently as say I would. I worked in places west of Natick, so I needed a car, generally speaking. I think, yeah, you're right. There is a shifting demographic. I think there'll be a bump for 3 bedroom places. But again, I go back to the, you know, are those going to be market rate units, and are people going to want to afford to do that? I think one of the things that the state, I think, has to take the lead on here is we see a lot of tear downs, right? And when you typically see a tear down, they're building $1 million house or $1 million plus house to replace that. And I have seen a book, I think it's called The Missing Middle or something thereabout, that talks about how do you develop and encourage workforce housing for people who don't have the high income. Maybe they have families, but want a more modest house. I think, we have a house that's a good sized house and it's just the two of us, would we, if we were buying again, would I buy as big a house? We actually bought the house because it was convenient to the train station. But, I'm at some point say, I'd like a smaller house. But I'd also like to be able to afford to be able to sell my house and move somewhere in Natick. And right now that the list of places to go is small.
Yeah, housing affordability is a huge issue. I do want to get Elise's take on this, and then also, Martin, did you say Cindy had her hand up there?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I think this is such an important topic, and I was thrilled to see the development going in to provide more affordable housing units. I was 100% in favor of that. And I think that we need to, there's two questions here, right? There's the question of the cost of living is making it very difficult for people to live their lives. And then there's a question about how does increasing the population of school-age students affect Native public schools, right? And they're interrelated, but they are separate questions. So I think from, affordable housing, we need more of it, and we need different kinds of it. Like, I think these affordable housing developments help a very small percentage of the people who need affordable housing. But I'm looking out my window right now at my garage and dreaming of how I can turn it into like a rental suite. And my experience growing up, I grew up in Canada, is that accessory dwelling units were the thing that allowed you to buy a house in the first place. It's the thing that supplemented your mortgage. It's where you rented yourself. When you were a college student, you would live in a basement suite or an accessory dwelling suite in someone's home near your campus. So I think that there's a way of providing affordable housing within Natick in addition to kind of these formal means. And I'm really thrilled that the accessory dwelling unit law went through and that we accepted it, because I think that's going to be a change that will allow people to come in and afford houses in Natick, knowing that they can defer part of their mortgage with rental income, and that those smaller units are going to provide places for people to stay who currently can't afford apartments in Natick. So I think I'm really excited to see where that's going to go. And then in terms of the impact on the school system, the school age population is declining. It's not increasing. So we're not seeing a trend of people buying these new houses and coming in with a passel of kids. That's just not happening. The number of school-age children is not increasing. So adding a few affordable, units, housing units, is not going to affect dramatically the population of the schools. And if it does, we will welcome those students into the schools. School committee is not in the business of keeping people out of Natick or out of Natick public schools. We're in the business of educating all the kids who are coming to our schools. And so we'll be here ready for them when they arrive, if they arrive.
Thanks, Elise. Cindy, who's that?
I just want to quickly comment on the EDUs, and I'm glad that Elise brought that up. That is a key opportunity for people, especially older couples or older people who may want to either move to a smaller unit and maybe rent their larger house that they no longer want to keep track of and do the upkeep on that. They also may want to have a relative living with them. Maybe they need need more care than they had in previous years, and it allows someone in their family or even just a caretaker to be on site, for example. So I think that was a great breakthrough in terms of helping with affordable housing stock. What I'd love to see is encouragement financially for builders to start building those. I think that could put a good sized dent in the affordable housing issue.
Thank you both.
So I've added one more thing. I had two, now I have three. One is just a comment, and I know Sarah Hannah is very aware of and concerned about this issue of the modest sized houses. And I don't know if there's anything that the select board or any organization could do to encourage people to, I don't know, some way where those houses remain affordable without the quote, I mean, it's
We call it
with the
little
lower-
A.
lowercase
little
a, affordable to folks like me when I finally finish my book and want to buy something that is something that's my size and not a multi-million-dollar place. Should I just run through my list?
Yeah,
They're
go
all
ahead and
over.
run through them. Yeah.
So that's really just a comment. My other thing was, I was thinking, in the previous discussion, a curious question about the mechanics of being on the select board and wondering, are there regular ties between the select board and state, either executive or legislative branches? And then the third one, I guess at the beginning, I was sort of remembering when Paul Joseph was talking, and he talked a lot about Route 9 and the businesses on Route 9 and how Natick has the same tax rate for businesses and residents, but always having to be aware on the select board of what's going on up there, because if one of those linchpin places at the mall leaves, then it has a big effect on Natick finances.
Yeah, that's, okay, I'm gonna take them in reverse order.
It was
So,
what's fresh.
Yeah, short-term memory. In terms of the businesses at the mall, we are definitely working towards helping the Natick Mall. Natick Mall is the biggest taxpayer in Natick. They have been, over the past, I would say, 5 years, reinventing themselves and attracting new businesses, such as Bossy Pickleball, such as Putt Shack, Level 99, Dave and Buster's, and so forth. And they even have a luxury car dealer if you are in the market. Not for me, but I don't fit in them. That's my excuse. Not the money, it's just that I won't fit. So I know that there are some other things that are in the works to attract people to places like the Lord and Taylor space and the Wegmans space. They're not concluded yet.
Yeah.
They are working on that. We're also working on something called the Golden Triangle study with our community and economic development people to say, how can we attract businesses to locate in that area? You know, and it's a little bit like the Field of Dreams, right? I don't know if you saw that meeting. They build a base, exactly. If we build it, they will come. So the more critical mass you get there, other stores or see that it's attracting the people to those stores. I think they are very forward looking at Natick Mall. They've just gone through a new round of financing. I think they're about as well run a mall as you will ever find. I've met with them along with Ms. Kaufman a couple of times, and they're very smart people and they work really hard.
That's great to know.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the whole economic development. If we want to allay the impact on taxpayers, that requires economic development. So we need to attract businesses. Another example is MathWorks expansion to a new building, as well as Abbey Labs expansion on, I think it was a former travel lodge. So again, just keep attracting businesses. We also have the mixed use developments where the ground floor can be retail or commercial. Get people in there, you know, make it simpler to do that. To do that, we have to continue our focus on how do we get people in there? What are other communities doing to do that. We don't want to, I'll give the example of BJ's, right? If you do a tax incentive program, which BJ's, we would not do for BJ's. BJ's then went to Westboro because Westboro offered them a 10-year tax, basically, not deferral, a tax reduction.
Okay.
When that tax reduction expired or was about to expire, they said, well, we want another tax deduction or we're gonna leave. So Westboro said, okay, see you later. And then where'd they go? They went to Marlboro. Because Marlboro said, yeah, we'll pay you another 10 years. So that to me is counterproductive. We want businesses to come to Natick because they want to be in Natick, right? We're in a good geographic location. We can capitalize on that. We have a very good population. So I think we can do that. So on to the mechanics of the select.
Sorry, just when you talk about storefronts, you talking about like next door and up the street?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
thanks.
all of those, you know, and I want to see a variety of different businesses. You look at the businesses that locate downtown, you know, Cilicia, top, I know I'm gonna get this wrong. The bookstore, why can't I remember the name? It's 10 Tree? Books?
10 trees, 10
Okay.
trees.
Thank you.
Five
Bates
Crows.
and Olives, Five Crows. All those businesses located downtown, even have a dance studio there, which you'll never see me in because I've got 4 left feet, not 2.
Metroworks.
And Metroworks. And these are the types of businesses that I think can thrive in Natick. And I think it's important to create the conditions for them to thrive. Mechanics of the select board working with the executive and legislative branch. We all participate in the Massachusetts Municipal Association. We go to those meetings, and those are really good for networking with peer select board people as well as government leaders. It's always got the governor, the lieutenant governor, and a lot of the state senators.
Yes.
So we interact with them. One good discussion that I had is the chair of the Mass Municipal Association was the former town manager of Arlington. And Arlington was working on an override that passed, I want to say 2 years ago, it might be 1 year. But he put me in touch immediately with the person who was the town manager, and he walked me through, you know, why they did it and what mechanisms they used to communicate. On the legislative side, we always have a legislative meeting at least once a year, hopefully more. But we have ongoing dialogue with them all the time. We were always working with Representative Linsky and Senator Spilka. We have a very open communication with them. If we have an issue that we think they can help us on, we have no hesitation of reaching out to them and asking for help. We are proud, but we know that we can only go so far, and so we need their help. And we talked about it earlier. We need their help to push the message to the federal level.
And how often are the Mass Municipal meetings?
They're once a year.
Once a year, okay.
But they have presentations, and they have a Mass Municipal Association represents all 351 towns. So they push an agenda to the legislative branch, and they say, here's what our members say are priorities. Here's the things that keep them up at night. Right? Go work on them. Right. And of course, you know, you have to reconcile that with available budget and all that stuff. But lastly,
go ahead, Bruce.
The last one on the appropriate sizing of houses. I think that has to happen at the state level, and it has to be zoning laws came into being after World War II. And a lot of the zoning laws haven't changed since then. And maybe there is an opportunity. I think we made a little progress with the ADU
Yeah.
stuff, and you see that people are looking at this and they're thinking, you know, there's gotta be some way to do this better, because we need the more little a affordable housing
Yeah.
than we have now.
Yeah.
We can't continue to, you know, exponentially raise prices of houses and expect that the broader community can afford to either come here or stay here. You know, and I just think there
Yeah.
needs to be
Yeah.
a concerted effort to do
I've
that.
heard that developers end up building big houses because otherwise they wouldn't be able to afford to build anything.
Right, and
That's a
that's why I think it's, you know, to some extent, I'd liken it to, you know, would we buy a all-electric car if there weren't a subsidy? Well, right now, it doesn't make sense without a subsidy because the cost and the volumes won't allow you to do that.
Yeah.
But I think if you create the incentives and
Yeah.
create momentum for people to just take a step back and say, what's it gonna take for this developer
Yeah.
to not build the biggest house, right? Maybe there's something in some fund that says, we'll compensate you for doing that. We will relax something or other. You know, we'll give, you know, that might be a good instance where you say, we'll tax it at a lower rate at the state level, right? So maybe you know, there's, you know, I'm all for listening to ideas on that. I think it's a really important thing.
Thank you. Bruce.
Again, it's a huge topic, but I do want to be mindful. We're actually just a bit past 10:30. So I guess I wanted to give both Elise and Bruce opportunity for any kind of closing statement, if there was anything in earlier answers they wanted to clarify or in light of the discussion. And then, you know, and we can kind of wrap up. So Elise, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just dropping my email in the chat. I thought it was a great discussion today. Thank you again for having me. I think all of these topics were really thought-provoking and really deserved even more time than we had here today. So I'm happy to continue the discussion on any of them if anyone wants to reach out to me. But again, just you know, grateful to be able to share some of my experiences with you here today. And I would ask that you would consider me for one of your school committee votes on March 25th. So thank you.
Thanks, Elise. And Bruce?
Okay, normally at this point, I would invoke what we call the ditto rule on the select board, but I just wanted to thank everyone today for the really great questions and attentive listening. It was clear that everybody was engaged, and this is a really great group to talk to because it crystallizes some of my thinking. I apologize to Elise for being long-winded on some answers. But I really, you could tell that I felt passionate about some of the questions that were asked. Martin was good enough to put in my website information as well as my email address. So I would ask you to please consider supporting my candidacy. I'd ask for one of your 2 votes in the March 25th election. I would also ask you one more thing, which is get your friends and neighbors out there and voting, right? I don't care who they vote for, what they vote for. This is something that's really important that they need to participate in. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, I'm guessing that the override is going to draw a lot of people to the polls as well. So thank you both. Next week we will have our last remaining pair of candidates, both of whom are on this session. Catherine Coughlin for Select Board and Donna McKenzie for School Committee. And then the following week, we have reserved for any other uncontested positions. We had a really good discussion last week with Jeffrey Alderson, who's running on the unopposed for moderator, but fascinating position of importance to the town. It was great to meet him. So far, the only confirmed candidate we have for that uncontested week is well, I'm forgetting his name, Paul, the fellow that ran for the planning board seat by appointment in that special town election, and now is running for a full seat, but in any event, thank you all for your time and discussion this morning. And look forward to joining you next week.
Might have not quite given.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
I'd love to say thank you again. I think what Bruce just stated that is great. This was a really great conversation this morning. I'm grateful for all of your guys' participation. Elise and Bruce, thank you so much for being here and for giving your time to our town. It's critical. We run on volunteers, and if we didn't have people like you, we would be in trouble. So thank you so much.